Hey, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. I'm Jesse Granger. I'm in Vegas filling in for Ian Mendez, who usually hosts the show. And I'm joined by Mark Lazerus in Chicago. He's filling in for Julian McKenzie. So it's an all e-bug day here on the Athletic Hockey Show. And we're going to be joined by two guests that you guys will be familiar with. Michael Russo, who I used to do Wednesdays with. He's also in Vegas, apparently, not working like me. He's just hanging out in Vegas. And we're going to talk to an old friend, Tarik El-Bashir, who comes to us from DC. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. We've got coaching changes. There's all kinds of stuff going on in the NHL this time of year. And it feels like we got to bring Michael Russo in right away. He's here in Vegas with me. Michael, what casino are you in right now?
I'm in the Cosmo, but I'm about to head down to the Wynn to go check out the WPT poker tournament, which Lazerus endorsed me going to. So,
yes. So you got to figure out a way to write off that vacation, Russo. I know what you're doing. Cosmo, though. Cosmo's clutch. Cosmo, a Marriott property, which is, about as good as you can do as a Marriott lifetime titanium member like Russo is.
Starting January, though, there's going to be all MGM properties going to be Marriott. So.
I know. How good is that? Well, a lot more options at this rate.
Yeah, exactly. So
this is all sports writers talk about, by the way. Like, if it's the first intermission of a game in Winnipeg in like the middle of January, we're just all talking about Marriott points and United miles, and that's where we're going to spend them in the summer. That's all we do. That's literally the only thing that matters.
I've never in my life talked about United miles.
Well, you're a Delta guy, Minnesota boy.
No.
I'm excited.
Jesse, aren't you excited for this? Jesse, who flew Spirit to the All-Star game last year.
Yeah,
stayed at the Motel 6.
Yes, exactly. I am a cheap traveler, and as someone who got into
as Laz and I flew first class to the All-Star game and stayed at the JW.
I definitely did not fly first class. You might have.
Yeah.
We spent that entire weekend berating Jesse for flying Spirit Airlines. Like, nobody should have to lower themselves to that level. Nobody.
Our two producers are behind the scenes just mortified right now. I'm just letting you know.
Yes, they are. This is all sports writers talk about. And all the hockey world has been talking about, I guess, for the last couple of days, is Ottawa finally did it. It seems like this has been coming for a while. DJ Smith fired in Ottawa after a loss to Vegas that I covered out here. The Golden Knights put it on the Senators pretty bad. And it seems like we've all been kind of predicting. We do our little athletic predictions where everyone votes. And I feel like DJ Smith's been getting all the votes since the beginning of the season. So how surprised are we that it finally happened? And what do you think what do you think was the straw that broke the camel's back? I guess let's start with you, Mark.
Well, I think we're all on those email lists where we get like the odds sent to us by Bovada and Bodog and all these sites. And I swear DJ Smith has been the most likely coach to be fired for, it feels like, since the mid 1980s at this point. It's just nonstop. When is DJ Smith going to be fired? And Craig Berube got fired before him, and Dean Evison, maybe that nobody saw coming compared to what DJ Smith was dealing with. And this had to happen, right? I mean, it's not even this is like doing a solid to DJ Smith at this point. He's been sitting there with the sword of Damocles over his head for so long now on a disappointing team with new management, and this always felt inevitable, right? I mean, there was no way he was going to make it out of the season. So let him go have Christmas with his family and not have to worry about this anymore, because, I mean, he's been toast for, it feels like, months now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just it was good to let him go so we didn't have to hear any more like fire DJ chants and things like that. But make no mistake, I mean, he needed to be fired. This is an unbelievably disappointing team. They are. This is not just the Ottawa Senators really of the last 4 or 5 years. There's a ton of talent on this roster. Yes, they've had injuries. Shabbat has had just 2 terrible injuries this year and has barely played. Yes, they had the Shane Pinto situation. Yes, they can't get a save, and that is in large part to the to the job that Pierre Dorion did. But there just comes a point where you got to look at this roster and say they are underachieving if you believe that you've built around the right cast of characters there. And, there's I look at up and down their lineup, and there's a ton of talent there, obviously starting with Brady Tkachuk. They gave the great big deal to Jake Sanderson. You have Shabbat there. You have a ton of talent up front, and they're just not getting wins. They can't kill a penalty. They can't kill a save. They can't defend. Sure, at times they make it fun with the ability to score goals, but even their power plays, last I look, in the bottom third of the league, and that for that talent, to me, there needs to be a change there. And it wasn't just, I get what obviously Steve Stais was doing and trying to be patient, but there just comes a point where you got to make a move to try to right the ship here, and we'll see if Jacques Martin could help guide them to better hockey, and also really maybe help them make a decision on who the next coach is going to be.
The hype train did these guys no favors either. I mean, entering this season, everybody was all on Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo to make the playoffs, and there was just no way that all three of those teams were going to make the leap, right? Like we're seeing it from Detroit, though they've really regressed hard in these last couple of weeks. But Ottawa and Buffalo are the same tire fires they always are, and I feel like if the expectations were tamped a little bit, of like, okay, we're still in the process, we're acquiring talent, now we have to figure out how to play, maybe there would have been a little bit more grace given to this team. But given the hype, I mean, I don't remember what our poll was at the beginning of the year, but Ottawa was a trendy pick to not only make the playoffs, but to do some damage. So for them to be sitting among the worst teams in the league, I mean, this had to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. And as Russo mentioned, Jacques Martin comes in. He's obviously coached there before. It's been a long time, over a decade since he was a head coach in the NHL. So things have changed. It's going to be interesting to see how, and obviously Daniel Alfredson coming in as an assistant coach. That'll be interesting. I agree with you guys. So much talent on that team. When you look at the lineup, they played Vegas the other night. You look at the lineup and it's like, this is a good team. How are they in last place or near last place? I'm interested to see what happens. Speaking of moves and drama, there's been plenty of that in Minnesota. While you're actually up there and not in Vegas, Michael, what can you tell us about for catch people up that are listening that don't know what's going on with the Minnesota and the front office?
Yeah, there's so much drama and so many controversies that I decided to just leave Joe Smith with it, and decided to leave. Said adios. I'm going to watch a poker tournament on TV. Yeah, I mean, right now, right now it looks like they're trying to come up with a separation agreement between the employee and Bill Guerin, the employee that went to HR with the alleged verbal abuse. And not just the one incident, but a series of incidents over the years. That is a negotiation that's currently going on. Technically, the employee still works for the organization, but he's not on his first road trip in 10 years. Wasn't at work all week last week, and we will. But right now, the Wild and the NHL are comfortable that Bill Guerin will continue as the general manager of the Minnesota Wild and the president of hockey ops after the promotion that he got with his new contract that kicked in on July 1st. The mutual parting of ways of Chris O'Hearn, we are getting closer to figuring out exactly what this was. This was not really an HR issue by any stretch of the imagination. This was a wrongdoing that he allegedly made in doing his job. And something that he fessed up to coincidentally during the discovery phase of the other investigation that was going on simultaneously. And once that was fessed up to, essentially a decision was made between the National Hockey League and the Minnesota Wild to let him go. It sounds like he just essentially made a mistake in something that he did. And again, we'll be able to report that closer. But right now, things are trying to settle down. They lost last night in Pittsburgh. They're playing the Bruins tonight. They've played much, much better under John Hines, but I'm sure there are times during this last couple of weeks that John Hines has probably wondered what the heck he walked into here.
How close do you think, I mean, Bill Guerin ever came to really losing his job over this? I mean, we're still waiting for some of the details here, but, he doesn't have a flawless history, and this seems like a credible accusation. But at any point, was he really in any danger here?
I don't think that he really was. I think this was an HR issue. I think that the investigators that came in, that was hired by the team, so that is a internal investigation from an outside agency that then is reporting everything, the findings, to the team. So I know that cynics out there will take that for what it's worth. But as far as I understand,
know anything about those in Chicago, so
yeah, exactly. And I think it was the same probably firm. But anyway, I know that they interviewed 15 people, and there were a lot of questions during those interviews if Bill Guerin essentially has ever done this to them. And as far as I understand, that has not been the case with any of the 15 that were interviewed. This employee has multiple documentation of different incidents that have happened with him over the years that he felt created a hostile working environment for him. And the last straw came, I think it was November 24th against Colorado before the game. I think it was actually the day they flew to on the Saturday to Detroit, where the incident happened, where Bill Guerin, lost his temper and had an alleged outburst. But he went to HR. The findings came back to Craig Leopold, Matt Maka, and their attorneys, and the decision was made in consult with the National Hockey League that Bill Guerin really didn't do anything. It was a fireable offense in their mind. And right now, again, I would be very, very surprised if this employee came back to work. I know he's been working remotely, but it just doesn't seem tenable that he's going to be able to, do his job without having interactions with Bill Guerin.
I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I feel like there's been, if there's positives to take from this and the Corey Perry situation in Chicago, it's that, and I think this is a lesson learned from the Kyle Beach saga, is that these teams are starting to take complaints more seriously. I think team employees are feeling more empowered to speak up and say, hey, I don't like the way this is going. I don't feel this is right. And teams are taking it seriously. This is the kind of thing that I feel like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, completely swept under the rug on an NHL team. Both of these incidents, whenever the details fully come out, with what we do know, this feels like, it feels a weird thing to say about a negative situation, but it almost feels like progress in the NHL, where maybe teams are starting to think about a safe work environment a little more seriously than maybe they did in the past.
Definitely. I totally agree. Let's talk some hockey. Transition to the ice, obviously not as serious, but the things have not been smooth for Minnesota on or off the ice this year. They are playing a little bit better, and I feel like a big part of that is Kirill Kaprizov not having the type of season that he's capable of, and pretty mediocre play for his lofty standards. Just what have you seen from him, Russo, and what does he need to do to get this to be at his best and obviously lead this team the way they need him to?
Yeah, I mean, the points wise, he has 25 points in 29 games. With a normal player that would be tolerable. He makes $12 million. He's supposed to be their superstar. He hasn't had a game this season where he has dominated at all. He doesn't have a goal in 6 games, 1 assist or 2 assists in that stretch. He got a second last night. It does not look like the same Kirill Kaprizov that's a dominant player every single night. There have been multiple occasions on this season where they've had injuries, or there's just been a moment in a game where they need their big guy to come through, and he just doesn't do it. And it's a huge concern. He had the injury last year in March when Logan Stanley toppled over him. I think that injury definitely was a much, much more serious injury than any of us knew about. He came back in the playoffs. He scored the first goal of the playoffs, so then was no good really the rest of the way. And this year, he just seems to not have those bursts. He doesn't have the edge work, and he doesn't get to the dirty areas. All the analytics show it, that he doesn't get a lot of shot volume from the areas that we normally see him not only get shot volume from, but score goals from. So this is a huge concern. We've seen Matt Boldy, who also had a slow start this season, absolutely start to tear it up under John Hynes, and right now we just haven't seen the same from Kaprizov, and it is a major deal. Zuccarello and him have been separated the last 3 or 4 games, and we'll see. Zuccarello's now out of the lineup with a bit of an injury. We'll see if they get back together when eventually Kirill gets back.
On the flip side of that, I mean, I'm eyeballs deep in Bedard mania down here in Chicago, but Brock Faber is, in any other year, would be considered a leading candidate for the Norris. Aside from the minutes that he's playing, which is astounding, I think 2 30-minute games now. What is it about him that's really standing out to you?
He just defends remarkably, so much more mature. Like for somebody his age, you just don't think that he would be able to defend the way that he is. But he makes these subtle little plays all the time. The way he's able to go back into traffic, go into areas along the wall, and really not only make real poised decisions, but hold on to that puck. And instead of just clanking it out off the glass, he's able to really make take that extra time to make the proper decision. And he's doing this, Mark, without guys like Brodin and Spurgeon in the lineup for a lot of this season now. He is, in my mind, been one of the best rookies in the league. Obviously, as you mentioned, in a year where Connor Bedard is probably going to lap everybody for the award, I think that at a minimum, I think that he should get some love for it. Granted, though, there are a ton of really quality rookies right now, not just Connor Bedard, but I definitely think that Brock should be in the conversation to at least get votes. And same thing with the Norris. I mean, the problem there is he's not a big, point guy, but suddenly he's become the number 1 power play guy. And it's a role that I think that when Jared Spurgeon comes back, he's probably going to end up on the second unit. And I think what's so impressive for this is a kid that's just straight off the college ice, Mark, and never played really power play in college because those University of Minnesota teams were jam-packed with great offensive defensemen, and Brock didn't get a lot of power play time. And yet they slowly, when John Hines took over, slowly put him into the situation on the second unit. And then when Spurgeon got hurt, put him on the first unit, and he's just been fabulous so far.
Between Brock Faber and Owen Powell, we're in a golden age of glasses-wearing defensemen. It's very exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
A half-blind guy like me to see.
Yep, me too.
I'm wearing contacts, so I'm partially in the club. Let's go from a young kid to a guy that's been playing professional hockey longer than than Faber's been alive. Zach Parise ramping up his training camp, looking eyes on a 19th NHL season. What's he got left in the tank? What do you expect, Michael?
I expect him to score one more goal because right now he's tied with Bill Guerin with 429 goals, and I can promise you that Zach Parise wants to get to at least 430 to pass Bill Guerin, the man who brought him out here in Minnesota. But yeah, I think that, look, he's, I think what was surprising to me about him not signing right out of the summer is that, he had a 20-goal season last year and looked reinvigorated, not somebody that, is 39 years old or whatever he is right now. And so I think that he's watched the Islanders play well and is ready after the new year to maybe sign the contract and get back at it and just have a half a year, bring a lot of energy and come in. This is somebody that in Minnesota, when he had the back issue, he also came back around January 1, and he was able to play really quality hockey for a while. So I don't think it's going to take him a while to really catch up. Obviously, he's much older now. The league is ramped up, mid-season to just step your toes in there. It's going to be really interesting to see how he's able to handle that. But the reports are true by Chris Johnston and Elliot Friedman that he is back in Minnesota, really ramping up his training, skating a ton. I've talked to him a lot recently, and I definitely think that come New Year, we're going to see him signing on the dotted line with the Islanders and get back to Long Island and try to help that team.
Yeah, and he's a guy that he probably can just step in. Besides just being a savvy veteran, his game isn't predicated on speed anymore. I mean, we're seeing Patrick Kane struggle a little bit. He had a couple of assists last night, kind of adapting to the mid-season pace of the NHL. But that's not going to be an issue for Parise. He's going to park himself in front of the net. He's going to score some ugly goals. I mean, he got 21 last year. This is a guy who can still play, he can still score. And there's still a premium for that. Even if he's playing, 11, 12 minutes a night in a specialized role, maybe he's on your second power play unit out front, he can still do some damage out there. So a lot of teams would be interested in signing him. Plus, he'll be cheap, which is really valuable at this time of year because, as we've seen with waivers, you can't just pick up guys you want. You got to get them at just a really, really low value.
Right.
Yeah.
Not only is he cheap, but like you said, he does. I mean, how many coaches do you hear every night in their post-game press conference? We didn't get to the front of the net. We didn't get to those there. Like, he does exactly what every coach in the NHL is begging his team to do for almost no money. I think there should be a line of teams.
And there are I think many teams that are poking around. Obviously, at this stage in his career, money might be the issue. But I think if Lou gives him that ring, there's such a respect level between Lamoriello and Zach Parise. I'd be shocked if he goes anywhere else but the island. But again, he wants to win a Stanley Cup, and if all of a sudden a team comes calling that he genuinely believes that has that ability to give him something that he's never had in his career, that would be very, very enticing.
Let's wrap things up with the topic that you are very passionate about, Mike. I know you hate 3-on-3 overtime, and it needs to be fixed now. What do they need to do?
Well, I cover the Wild, and that's probably why I feel this way. I will say the Wild under Dean Evison went from being the worst 3-on-3 team in the league to the best for a long time until they had a couple losses last year. But they had the most at one point, 3-on-3 overtime wins, and they were exciting. And, Kaprizov was scoring, it felt like every single game, and Eriksson Ek, and obviously they had Dumba and players like that. But right now, this Wild overtimes that I've seen the last couple of years, and when I watch on TV and see other teams as well, the reset is driving me absolutely crazy. Yeah. It's no longer the end-to-end, 3-on-3 excitement that we see. Now, there are some games that have been remarkable. But then there are some games that are just hard to watch. And I covered one the other day, guys, that might have been the worst 3-on-3 game I've ever seen in my life against Calgary. I believe it was Calgary. It was either Calgary or Vancouver. It was impossible to watch. Yeah, it was just constantly throwing it back to the goalie, throwing it back to the red line. And I don't know how you could actually add some sort of some sort of backcourt violation.
That's exactly what it is. You would put a backcourt vialation in overtime.
There's just got to be something that allows, and then I don't know how you legislate it. I can't imagine it's a penalty, but does play just stop and the other team gets the puck and go?
Defensive zone draw, no change.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense. But when the GMs brought this up earlier this year at one of their meetings. I think it was actually the meeting that we covered last in was it that one? The one in Chicago?
I believe it might have been.
Or no, it was at the Hall of Fame GMs meetings.
Right.
I just thought, all right, these guys are bored. They have nothing to talk about. Let's hey guys, let's wear white helmets with colored jerseys and colored that was the type of GM meeting they had, and then they start, let's start fiddling with round 3. And then we get to Sweden right after that. It was that week, and I watched them play Ottawa and Toronto in 3-on-3 overtime, and both those overtimes were atrocious until Nylander scored the amazing goal there. But the Ottawa-Minnesota game was brutal to watch, that overtime. And I just think that what I've seen, at least from my perspective lately, is teams just, it's a coaching strategy. It makes a ton of sense. You don't want to give up the puck, so you might as well throw it back over the red line or your goalie and do a reset. And I just think it's become super hard to watch, and it's an issue now that I think the league needs to actually address come GM's meetings when we're there in March.
I feel like the same thing happens every time, right? Like the first 2 minutes are incredibly boring. It's super conservative, and either a penalty gets called, which completely ruins overtime, defeats the whole point of 3-on-3 overtime, or there's a quick turnover, and then what we want to see in 3-on-3 overtime starts, right? Like something has to go wrong for 3-on-3 to go right in our minds. And look, 3-on-3 overtime is not hockey. It is a gimmick. It is not as gimmicky as the shootout, but it is a gimmick. That means you could do whatever the hell you want to fix it. You could put in the red line backcourt violation. You could, say no backwards passes. You can make them put on a tutu and dance around. There's nothing you can't do. This isn't hockey. 3-on-3 is great. It's fun. It's not hockey. So you can fix this. And the NHL needs to do, whether it's go to 10 minutes, whether it's put a shot clock. I would love to see a shot clock of some sort. You have to release the puck. At some point, you have to release the puck, and you will make this much, much better to what we thought it was going to be, back when it was first instituted.
Yeah, and I would agree. Like, if you're going to extend overtime by 10 minutes, then you have to add the backcourt violation, because then it'll just be 10 minutes of this.
It'll be even worse because they'll be conserving energy the whole time.
Like we need something. But I don't know. It's just everything's changed, and it's been only the last year and a half. And I just think that it's become completely opposite of what they want. I mean, you want end-to-end excitement for the fans to keep it from getting the shootout, and right now we're not seeing that.
I was watching an Oilers game the other night in overtime, and they did not put Connor McDavid on the ice for the opening faceoff. And I was like, all right, that's it. It's broken. Yeah. This is proof that it's broken. And
Luke Richardson has Connor Bedard, and he's been putting out Jason Dickinson, Nick Foligno every single time to start overtime.
Right, because if you don't win the faceoff, you don't want to waste your star player's entire shift just chasing them around with the
Blackhawks used to do that. They would have Jonathan Taves or somebody go out there, or Marcus Kruger win the faceoff, and then if they won the faceoff, he'd run to the bench, and Patrick Kane would hop over the bench. That's where possession is absolutely everything.
Yeah. If you don't want Connor McDavid on the ice at all times during overtime, there's something wrong with it. We need to make it to where that should be our goal with the rule, is make it to where the Oilers want to put him on. Because if they want to put him on the ice for the whole thing, then we fixed it. Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thanks for joining us, Michael. We're gonna let you get to some poker now.
Yeah, Jesse, come on down there. The win. I'll get you a credential.
I know I live in Vegas. I'm not a poker guy. I feel like watching it on TV, it's okay because I can see what cards they have. I don't understand watching poker in person where you can't see the cards on the table. What am I even watching? It's hard enough when I can see their cards. If it's just cards facing down and you just see people looking at each other, what are we watching for?
I went through the poker phase like everybody else did, like 10 whatever years ago it was, where I was watching the WPT all the time, and I was watching the World Series, and I was playing online. And when I went to Vegas, I played. I grew out of it. It's boring.
Can you guys stop? I'm trying to be excited about today. You guys are just absolutely just buzz killing this thing to death. So
you're in Vegas. Go see a show and get a nice dinner, man.
I'll do that after. Gotta watch The Wild at 4.
Oh, do you have to?
Yeah, I do. You have to watch Brock Faber and try to.
I'm sure Joe's got it covered.
Pump his tires. I can't read another freaking Connor Bedard piece from
Oh,
you.
come on. The last 2 weeks I've seen the hell with Connor Bedard. Brock Faber should be winning the Calder. And then a week later, forget the Calder. Brock Faber should be winning the Norris. Now tomorrow it's going to be the hell with the Norris. Brock Faber should be president of the United States.
I'm just trying to, we're controlling Blackhawk fans with a puppet string right now.
They have so little to go on right now. Let them have one thing.
Oh, they're going to get Celebrini here in a couple months. I mean, my God.
Hey,
the league's just
4 more draft lottery wins and they'll be the Oilers.
Yeah.
Look how well that's gone.
Exactly. See you, Jesse.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Take care. Bye.
Always fun talking with Mike. And he enjoys Vegas more than I do. And I think he might actually be here more than I don't even travel that much, but I think he actually spends more time in Las Vegas than I do. But that was fun. Let's okay. So Sidney Crosby, he's 13th now. I feel like we do this every week with Sidney Crosby. He now is 13th on the all-time scoring list. Got another point last night against the Wild, or 2 nights ago against the Wild. Mark, do you have anything to say about Sidney Crosby that you haven't said up to this point in your life?
All right. Yes, I will go out on a limb here and say that Sidney Crosby is a very good hockey player. I'm going to say it. I said it. Look, it feels almost stupid now to say that Sidney Crosby is somehow underrated. But he's somehow underrated, right? He's been one of the 10 best players in the league every single year, and we never talk about him anymore. And part of that is because Pittsburgh has kind of faded into the middle of the pack, and they're always in kind of disarray. But, Sidney Crosby went from this all-time wonderkin to this all-time scorer to this Selke caliber two-way player without really sacrificing the scoring. I mean, he very well could be on the Mount Rushmore of the NHL right now. He might be one of the 4 greatest players that we've ever seen, and I swear to God, we never talk about him.
Yeah, I mean, like the infusion of the young stars, he kind of just gets like you want to talk about the new up and coming. It was Cale Makar, it was whoever it is, and we just kind of forget about him. Yeah, and I agree. It is a big part of it is Pittsburgh not being what they were. What I find fascinating though is we may not be talking about Sidney Crosby, or we may not be paying attention, but I feel like the players appreciate Sidney Crosby more than every time I feel like the Golden Knights, some player will do something good and then I'll just be talking to him and they're like, yeah, that backhand, that was like Crosby. Like the players bring his name up constantly. Like I think
I was surprised when the Hawks drafted Bedard. I was expecting him to say, oh, my favorite player is Patrick Kane, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid. It was Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby, who I think has been in the league longer than I think he was a rookie the year that Connor Bedard was born. And that's still his guy. And he got to open his career face off against Crosby, which is a nice little poetic moment there. He still holds that allure. I think that like young players now, they like the flashier players, but there is this respect that Crosby carries. He is like the godfather of the NHL right now, where he is unimpeachable and nobody would ever say a bad thing about him. Remember, like not that long ago when the narrative on Sidney Crosby was he was soft and he's a whiner, he's a crybaby. All the misogynistic stuff you'd hear about him, and it's you don't hear that anymore. Like there's nobody left that could really say anything bad about Sidney Crosby on or off the ice. He's just the model at this point. He is the quintessential modern hockey player.
How much of it is like Connor McDavid doesn't have the team success. Like Crosby has the cups. Yeah. He's got the Olympic gold medal. Like I think that's what makes him the godfather, the role model, whatever it is. I think a lot of it is some of the stars that have come in the league, they haven't won it yet, whereas Crosby did it right off the bat, right? He had 2 cups before you could blink.
Right, and I think that goes a long way, obviously. You need the rings in the room matters. It feels like it matters more to hockey players than maybe it does to other sports. It's not like, if you've never won a Super Bowl, it doesn't matter. You're still Dan Marino. Or, you're still Shohei Ohtani, whether you've even had a winning season, it doesn't matter. But in hockey, it's such it's all the cliches about we before me and yada, yada, yada. But it really does hold true. They really think that. So a Stanley Cup is so much to do with your legacy in the NHL. And Crosby's got 3 of them. He's got all the individual hardware. He's won the gold medals in the Olympics. There's nothing he hasn't done. And so he carries a lot of weight with players, both his contemporaries and the next generation. I mean, we're kind of like 2 generations removed now, because you have like McDavid's generation and McKinnon's generation, which grew up with Crosby, and now you have the Bedards and Leo Carlsons and Adam Fantillis, who grew up watching the guys who grew up watching Crosby. And here's Crosby, still there. He's still a 100-point guy. He's still playing, spectacular defense. He's still just great. And he just kind of grinds away. And I think that's part of it too, is the style of play. He plays a hard game. He plays that heavy kind of game where he's not just coasting out there, racking up points. He is still like a consummate 200-foot player, and it's almost impossible to not respect him at this point.
100%. And he's done a lot of that stuff against the Washington Capitals, that rivalry. And that's my way of transitioning it to DC, where we're going to be joined by Tarik El-Bashir, good old buddy. The last time I saw Tarik, I was riding a electric scooter through the streets of Nashville. What's up, scooter gang buddy?
Memory serves me correctly, you almost ran over Roberto Luongo, who was stepping out the curb from another, like a restaurant or something.
Robbed us of a great tweet. You should have hit him.
It would have been a great headline. I had my laptop ready to fire out a story.
How you doing, Tarik?
Doing great. How you guys doing?
Good,
Excellent.
good.
Cool.
What's new in Washington? Obviously, the Capitals are overachieving. It's kind of weird to say that, because this team has been like a perennial playoff team, and they're not that good this year, but they are a lot better than we expected them to be. I think everyone I feel like we do this with every team, with the aging players, Boston and Pittsburgh, and maybe we over exaggerated their downfall. What stood out to you and why they've been better than we thought they'd be this year?
Yeah, great question, Jesse. I feel like they're grinding out wins better than they have in years past. 1-goal wins, low-scoring wins. They're defending pretty well. Their goaltending, and I know this is an area of specialty for you, Jesse, has been outstanding, especially Charlie Lindgren, who entered the season as the number 2 and is now kind of the 1A, sort of behind Darcy Kemper, or alongside Darcy Kemper, I should say. I feel like the goaltending is maybe papering over a little bit of their struggles at the offensive end. If you look at them right now in the standings by points percentage, they're 3rd in the Metro, and the Metro is not an easy division. I'm not saying that they're going to, contend for a Stanley Cup this year, but they are overachieving right now, and they're doing it at a time when they don't have their big guns going. I mean, we can't have a discussion about the Capitals without talking about Alex Ovechkin, who's not scoring at anywhere close to the clip that he scored in recent years. TJ Oshie has struggled and is now on IR, was put on IR earlier today. John Carlson's having a good season, but Evgeny Kuznetsov, another key part of the equation here in DC, is having an off year. So my suspicion is eventually the big guns are going to get going. Eventually that power play is going to come around a little bit. And if they're able to maintain the other areas of their game that are doing so well right now, they might actually be one of those surprise stories. I mean, look, guys, we've all covered this league for a long time now. Every year when you get to playoff time, you're like, you go back and you look at your predictions, you're like, I had that team missing the playoffs by 30 points. How did they get in? I mean, that happens every year to like 2 or 3 teams, right? There's usually 2 or 3 teams in each conference that knock out a team you thought was going to be in.
Ovechkin's sitting with 5 goals in 28 games. It's almost unthinkable at this point. I think so many of us just assumed he was going to cruise to the record because he's just such a machine. How much of this is a fluke, and how much of this is like a genuine concern about the way he's playing right now?
I mean, there's concern, no doubt about it. I think there are a number of things that are going on right now. You look at his shooting percentage. Last time I checked, I believe it was under 5%. I mean, that's absurdly low for him. He's typically in the 14 to 15% range. I mean, that's going to eventually return to close to the average. He might not get to 15 this year, but he's not going to finish the year shooting under 5%. I think the power play struggles right now. I believe the Capitals power play is 31st out of 32 teams. It has struggled almost all year. And
those go hand in hand, right? If Ovechkin's not scoring on the power play, they're not scoring on the power play.
exactly, Laz. I mean, and that's where Ovi gets a large percentage of his goals, or at least he has historically. And so that's not going right now. I think when Nicholas Backstrom decided to take a step back from the game a month or so ago, I think everyone saw the struggles on the ice, but I don't think anyone realized how much of an impact that was going to have on the power play. I mean, he is just such a key part, or has been such a key part of that unit for so long. They've struggled mightily without him. Evgeny Kuznetsov is another player who is a big part, and he just really hasn't been himself thus far this year. So again, getting back to what I said a minute ago, if the big guns ever get going and that power play ever gets going, and they're able to still get that really top 10 goaltending from Kemper and from Lindgren, and are able to defend pretty well, this might be a team we're talking about a couple months from now as potentially getting in as a not just scraping in as the 8th, maybe getting in as the 5th or 6th seed in this league, in this division, or in this conference, I should say.
How different is the style of play for the Caps this year? Because for so long they've been high octane offense. We're going to outscore you. And you mentioned the goalies are playing well, but it just seems like every night I turn on a Caps game, it's a low score. And you mentioned grinding it out. Like, is it just is that just a product of the goalies playing really well and the Stars not scoring, or are they playing a different style of hockey and trying to grind out wins in a way that we haven't really seen this team do like in this era?
Jesse, they want to score. They want to be scoring goals right now. That's just not working for them. And so I wouldn't say that Spencer Carberry came in his first year and said, "All right, boys, we're going to trap it up and we're going to win games 2-1." That's just kind of what they have to do when they're not scoring at the rate they're used to scoring, or at the rate that they want to score. I mean, they want to be a puck possession team. They want to be a team that's playing on its toes, not swizzling backwards, like a school of fish in a trap every night. That's not how they're playing. I just feel like the puck's not going in at a consistent rate at one end, and so they have put a little bit more emphasis on defending, because that's the only way to win when you're not scoring. And also the goaltending has just been really, really good.
Tarik, you got a lot of sports writers worried they're going to lose their connection to the Irish channel. What's the latest on the possibility of the Caps moving out of the district?
I actually went to the Irish channel just a couple nights ago, and it wasn't.
Why wouldn't you?
It wasn't even a game day. I don't even really live close to there. I just went. It's such a great bar. Look, I've been a member of Monumental Sports now for about 3 months since leaving the Athletic, and so I just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, sorry.
At the same time, look, this is a big company. I just went to their holiday party a few days ago. It's a big company, and it's getting even bigger, and they need to expand. They need more office space. They need more just space in general, and they want to have things under kind of one umbrella. And this is an opportunity moving to Northern Virginia, where they're going to be able to have a big office space, and also have their studio there, and have a home for the Wizards and Capitals, and retail space and hotels and all this other stuff. And I know there's people, longtime fans, maybe that came on board when this team moved to DC, that are like, "Oh, I'm not going all the way to Virginia. This stinks. Why are they abandoning DC?" I'm old enough to remember, guys. I'm from Maryland. When the Capitals played in Landover, Maryland.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
As I think Jesse, I think you were still in diapers, but
I've been there. I covered a game there my first year out of college.
I went there as a kid before I even dreamed of being a sports writer, and from the early 80s. So I feel like there's a little bit of manufactured outrage from some corners over the team moving 4.5 miles south of where they currently are located.
Yeah, they're not moving to like deep in the heart of Virginia here. They're moving to Alexandria, right?
They're moving to Alexandria, and look, it's going to be a world-class arena. And also, guys, we travel all over the place because of our jobs. We see what the new arenas are like. We see what it looks like in Vegas, and what it looks like in Edmonton, and what it looks like in Seattle.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can say this, but that arena is a dump. It's one of the worst ones in the league. The Capital One Center.
It was built on a budget in the late 90s. And you can pump $800 million in there and make it sort of better, put a little lipstick on it, but you can't really make it what these new places are because of how tight and how confined the space is there in downtown Washington. Now, another thing I got to throw out there, guys, this is so far away, and there are still so many legislative hurdles that have to be crossed. Like, I'm not looking for property in Potomac Yard, Virginia right now. I'll put it to you that way. Like, I'm going to wait until there's actually a shovel like stuck in the ground. And I'm going to go, okay, honey, can we look in Alexandria? We used to live there. Remember Alexandria? Can you see if there's can we find an affordable house over there? But until that happens, guys, so many things can happen.
Well, we're dealing with this in Chicago with the Bears. The Bears they've bought land in Arlington Heights out in the northwest suburbs and are basically saying they're going to move. But the city is still trying to come up with ways to either build a new Soldier Field or renovate Soldier Field, make it worth their while to stay. Fans are deciding what's better for them. And going to Soldier Field is a nightmare because it's downtown, but it's great because it's right on the lakefront. This is the way it goes. The Giants and Jets are New York teams that play in New Jersey. This happens all over the sports world.
And going back to, they were the Washington Capitals when they played in Landover, Maryland.
And the Washington Commanders play in Virginia too, don't they?
They have their headquarters in Ashburn, Virginia, and they play in Landover. So
there you go, yeah,
across the street from where the Capitol Center used to sit. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of manufactured outrage because we get outraged about everything. We're
just mad about the channel, Tarik, the channel.
Well, maybe we can get them to build a new channel. There's retail space available. There's going to be space for restaurants and bars. We can just talk to the owners. We'll talk to Steve Wino and have him talk to his boys. And
yeah, let Wino run this. He'll take care of it.
Yeah, make him the point person on this, Laz.
I just have to say, as someone who's lived in the West my whole life, Colorado, Nevada, where like crossing state lines, that's an 8-hour drive to me. Like, oh, you're going to go to another state. Another state is like another universe to us out here. And it's just so wild to me on the East Coast, like with everything so close. Like I saw they're moving to Virginia and I'm like, oh my God, like it's a whole new fan base. No, actually I drive further to go to T-Mobile Arena than they do then they'll have to go from Washington DC to this. Like it's just
Jesse
doesn't work that way.
I live in Maryland. I drive from Maryland through Washington to get to the Capitals practice rink in Arlington every day, and then I do it backwards. So I am in 3 different jurisdictions in 40 minutes every day.
Whatever happened to the Caps practice facility in Odenton, Maryland? I remember that place.
Oh, it's still there. My son plays junior hockey there. Is
that right? That's awesome.
Yeah,
I interviewed Jaromir Jagr there after he got traded from the Penguins to the Caps. I got him there for the first time.
I interviewed Jagr there many times too. It's still there. It's actually got 2 sheets of ice now.
Nice.
It's home to a big youth program, and my son plays for the Maryland Black Bears of the NAHL, which plays there and gets 1,000 fans a night. It's actually pretty cool. Still there. Getting back to the practice rink in Arlington, it's probably eventually going to end up in Potomac Yard, Alexandria, which is even closer. It's like 2.5 miles away. Because they want to, Ted Leonsis, the owner, really kind of has this idea. He wants to have everything kind of in the same place. Right now, the organization is kind of spread out over many different places.
Yeah, that's what Chicago has. They, over the time, they built a new practice facility for the Bulls right next to the United Center, and then 2 years later, they opened one for the Blackhawks, a block and a half from the United Center. They built up this huge office building that attached to the United Center, and now everyone is just within like a 2-square block thing, and it's just a lot easier way of doing things.
I once waited for an Uber outside of that practice rink for the Blackhawks maybe 2-3 years ago. It was the coldest I've ever been. I've been in Edmonton when it's -20, but that was the coldest, waiting for my Uber ride back to
we do cold pretty well here.
Whew.
That wind off the lake. Oh no.
Wind off the lake, whatever that was, man. I was uncomfortable.
Awesome. Well, good stuff, Tarik. We really appreciate you coming on and talking some Caps and some geography and everything else with us.
Irish
some
Channel.
bar scene. Yeah.
Always good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, anytime, guys.
Awesome. That was Tarik El-Bashir. He's the Capitals insider for Monumental Sports Network, and he's the ringside reporter for the NHL on TNT. Great stuff from Tarik out in Washington. All right. Some other stuff that we've got to talk about. Vancouver Canucks forward Andrei Kuzmenko. He's a healthy scratch for tonight's game against the Predators. Head coach Rick Tocchet confirmed. He's been mentioned some trade rumors. It's funny because things were so rosy for Vancouver early in the season, and they've calmed down a little bit. What were your first thoughts when you see Kuzmenko obviously he's been in the kind of trade rumor mill, and now he's healthy scratch. Do you feel like something's going to happen, or this is more Tocchet sending a message to his players?
Hey, this is a 39 goal scorer last year. So if this is a guy who's available, that's a huge guy that's available. We don't see that very often in the NHL. I'll believe it when I see it. Vancouver's got a good thing going right now, and Tocchet's a hard coach, so I could easily see him just sending a message here. Vancouver's managed to shed a little bit of cap over the course of the year. They need to do more if they want to add, add some defense or anything like that. But that's a big piece to abandon just because he's off to a relatively slow start in his second year. I wouldn't move on from him just yet.
Right. And like you said, Tocchet is the type of coach that he's one of the guys. That is a total Tocchet move, to send a message, bench the 39 goal scorer because he didn't win a board battle the other night.
Right. He's not going to sit next to him on the bed and next to his locker stall and put his arm around him and say, "Hey, buddy, you doing okay? Everything all right, buddy?" He's not the new wave. He's not the new agey coach.
How legit do you think Vancouver is? Because the goaltending,
the PDO gods.
Right. But the thing is, like, I always push back a little bit against the PDO, like, oh, the PDO is so high, because PDO is also a representation of, like, some teams just have better shooters than others, and some teams have better goalie than others. And Vancouver has shooters all over the ice, fantastic shooters, and they've got arguably the best goalie in the league this year, Thatcher Demko. It's not like he isn't someone that came out of nowhere that we think, oh, well, it's like Charlie Lindgren is a good example. He's like third in goal saved above expected. Yeah. Is Charlie Lindgren going to finish there? Probably not. Demko is legitimately an elite goalie. Like, how legit do you think Vancouver is?
I think they're pretty legit. I don't have them in the same tier as Colorado, Dallas, and Vegas, which are, in my mind, the three clear best teams in the West. But they're right under that tier. They're with Edmonton and some of these other teams right now. LA, I know LA is playing great, but I'll believe it when I see it in the playoffs. It's a good club, and like you said, I mean, Demko is the reason I believe. I'm a big fan of his. I think, you talk to players around the league, and a lot of them tell you he's the best goalie they faced all year. And he's proven it in the past too. So this is a good team. Are they overperforming the metrics? Sure. Is there going to be some regression to the mean? Sure. Are they going to suddenly collapse and the world's going to, the floor's going to just come cave in underneath them? No, this is a good team with a lot of skill, and skill always, finishing ability always can overperform the metrics, right? If you got guys that can finish and you've got an elite goalie, they're going to do better than, the standard, 1,000 PDO.
Yep, I totally agree. And I think that because they have that type of finisher all over the ice, they're a dangerous team in the playoffs, because it just takes, if they just finish for 4 games, you're done. It like
if Demko gets hot, they win the cup. I mean, it's that easy, right?
Yep. And obviously he's been a big reason why they're so good. Looking around the league, man, is goaltending depth important. Vancouver has relied on just 2 guys, but you look around the league, Vegas is dealing with it. I just saw Aiden Hill leave in the middle of a game, and then Logan Thompson got hurt in that same game. We thought the E-bug was going to come in. Thompson ended up just gutting it out and finishing the game. But you look around, Russo is injured in Detroit. Joseph Wall was doing so well for Toronto. He's hurt. Freddie Anderson is out with a blood clot thing. They're saying he might have some light at the end of the tunnel. Ottinger's hurt in Dallas.
Yep.
It just seems like everywhere you look, there are goalies hurt, and they are like, we're seeing guys that you did not expect to play NHL games this year. And they're not just playing one game. They're having to play multiple games.
Well, that's just it. And there's nothing they can do about it because all these teams are up against the cap. So even when, I know Antti Ranta's been atrocious this year, but he's still got a pedigree. He's still like quality NHL goaltender that's better than some of the guys they're trotting out around the league. But he makes $1.5 million, and they can't afford that. That's where we're at. A guy gets a free goalie, a free playoff tested goalie is available, and nobody claims him, even though everybody needs a goalie because they can't afford him.
It's fascinating. And like but then you look at the other way and it's like, okay, well, Carolina is looking to find a better option, and they're dead last in the league in save percentage. And some teams are their save percentage stats are bad. And I'll sit here as the goalie guy and argue like, well, that's not the goalie's fault. The save percentage is a team stat. Yeah. Well, the Carolina Hurricanes make things easier on their goalie than most teams. I mean, you
everything to the outside, everything to the outside,
and they hold on to the puck. Their possession is unreal. You aren't facing. This isn't a firing squad that these Carolina goalies. This isn't what the Sharks goalies are going through. I'll put it that way. Carolina makes things easy on their goalies, and yet they have the lowest save percentage in the league. And they waived Raanta. Maybe teams are looking at it like, if the team that is easy on goalies and they can't make a stop doesn't want him, I don't think we do.
Yeah, I mean, but how? I 100%. But how many times do we see with a goalie a change of scenery, as they say, and everything changes? Like where he just needs to get out of his head. He just needs to see a different, like, you know, it's goaltending. It's voodoo. You can say all you want about the science of it. It's all bullshit to me. None of it makes any sense. Goaltending is magic, and nobody can prove otherwise to me. So I don't know what you do about it, right? I don't know how you address that if you have no money to do it, and if you're a team like Carolina that has legitimate Stanley Cup hopes.
Right.
Boy, I mean, you know, like someone like I'm in Chicago. I see Peter Mrazek. He's been terrific this year, like really, really good. You know, but with his injury history and his salary, he's almost untradeable. Like nobody's looking at Peter Mrazek to come and save them, no matter how well he plays behind a god awful and completely injury riddled Blackhawks defense. Doesn't matter. He can go out there and shut out, and he's probably not tradable just because of the whole situation right now. So. It's a weird thing about goalies. They don't tend to move at the deadline either, because goalies require more time to adjust to a team's scheme than a forward or a defenseman does. It's just a simple fact of NHL life is goalies very rarely get traded at the deadline because it takes too long. It's too long to adapt.
One of the rare, like, I guess, blockbuster goalie trades was between the teams we cover. Robin Leonard coming to Vegas.
That's right.
Like, I remember when that happened, I was like, whoa, a goalie. Like, you almost never see a starting goalie, like, or a goalie projected to start games for a team moved around the deadline. It's for the exact reason that you mentioned. All right, let's wrap it up with a crazy story. I feel like every crazy story involves the Coyotes. It just follows them. We've got another one. The NHL and NHLPA are investigating how Arizona Coyotes defenseman Juuso Valimaki was left without care at a Dallas hospital for several hours in November after taking a slap shot to the mouth. This is wild. Mark, what do you think?
Is it wild? Like, I read this story and I'm like, wow, he got American health care. Welcome to the country. Like this is what we do to our regular citizens. Why would a hockey player be any different? I mean, I don't understand this. Like, people are outraged by this, and yeah, they should be outraged, but they're outraged for the wrong reasons. They're outraged that a hockey player had to be put through this, not that a human being had to get put through this. Like this man deserves special treatment because he plays hockey. No, he needed help and nobody gave him help. And this happens every day in hospitals across this country.
Right.
I've been left alone with a severe concussion. This is when I was in college at one of the best hospitals in America. And they said, whatever you do, this was at 2 a.m, whatever you do, don't fall asleep. And then they left me unattended for 3 hours at 2 a.m. Welcome to American healthcare. There's not enough resources. There's not enough doctors. There's not enough anything. And insurance doesn't cover any of it. Look, hockey players have way better healthcare than the rest of us do.
Yes.
Unknown caller.
I feel bad for the guy. It's awful what he went through, but this is not a news story to me. You send someone to the hospital in America, this is what you get.
Right. Yeah. How many people are just bleeding out of their mouth that we don't know their name because they don't play on the Arizona Coyotes and they're just sitting in waiting rooms for hours?
My dad, who had not to get too personal here, my dad had emergency quintuple bypass surgery just last year. Like, he barely survived it, and he had a gallbladder emergency just last month, and he was sitting in the waiting room for like 9 hours because they didn't deem him urgent enough. And I get it. Look, triage, that's a real thing. They have to. The hospital workers are doing the best they can, but that's why we need better healthcare and more hospital workers, right? Like, this Valimaki is not the first guy to go through this, and he won't be the last. And it's the symptom of a larger issue. The fact that he's a hockey player shouldn't play into it at all.
Totally agree. I think the American healthcare system is a good high note to end the show on. You think?
I'm glad there's no comment section on this podcast.
There is. They were mentioning earlier we needed a ticker notification that you think Sidney Crosby is a good hockey player.
It just amazes me that people think that a hockey player, and it has nothing to do with the fact whether he's American or not. Like, the fact that he's a rich hockey player means he should get special treatment. And people like you and me are sitting there arguing, this is outrageous that he didn't get it. It's like, why would he get special treatment? This is a larger problem.
Yeah, see, there you go. There's a comment. Gordon Whitney chiming in. Consider the risks of the sports. Why do football players have better facial protection than hockey players? That's a great question.
You know, I was talking to a player literally this morning for a different story. We were talking about neck protection for skate protection. And he said that he didn't think that it should be mandatory. And he's like, it should be like mouth guards. He's like, obviously mouth guards are good for you, and the science backs up that it's smart to wear them, but players don't. Players choose not to wear them because they don't like them. And it's like, well, yeah, that's just stupid. Why don't they have mouth guards mandatory? Why it's like, it's only a matter of time. And I think the Adam Johnson thing, not to, turn it serious here, but like that was a case of further proof that it's only a matter of time before these guys are wearing full bubbles or full cages. 10 years, 15 years ago, visors were unusual. 15 years from now, it's going to be unthinkable to be out there without a full face shield. The way that these sticks are just getting whippier and whippier, and the players are getting better and better. Like,
faster,
you got to protect.
The game is fast, yeah.
How many times do we need to see a guy take a puck to the face before we realize, wow, that's dumb. We can avoid that. Just avoid it.
Yeah, the crazy thing to me isn't that they haven't made it mandatory for the bubbles. It's that it's illegal to wear the bubble unless you have a facial injury. The first time I ever heard that rule, I thought it was made up. I'm like, there's no way.
Jesse, this is a sport where the letter of the law says you can fight, but only if you keep your helmets on. So you can throw punches, but only if you're hitting plastic. This is a stupid, stupid sport. God bless it. It is a stupid sport.
It is. And I love it. I love this stupid sport.
I do too. What is wrong with us?
Thanks for talking about it with me for an hour today and filling in, Mark.
Anytime, buddy.
Awesome. And thanks for everyone who was listening. I am going to remind you about a BetMGM special that's going. They've got a special 7 days of parlays promotion, and they focus on a different sport every day. And today is hockey day. Tuesday, they're focused on the NHL. You can increase your winnings with a bonus token. Go to BetMGM for their 7 days of parlays, and you can increase your winning with a bonus token. Thanks for listening to the Athletic Hockey Show. From right now through the end of the year, you can get a 1-year subscription to the Athletic for $19.99 or a 2-year subscription for $39.99 when you visit theathletic.com/hockey show. Follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/@theathletic-hockey-show. Wednesday, we're off. We return Thursday with Ian Mendez, Mark Lazerus, Down Goes Brown, and Eric the Hat Check. Thanks for listening, everybody.